Hey everyone, welcome to the Bible Belt Bros podcast. It's another day. It's going to be a great day. Today we have, again, my co-host, Andrew, not Fisher. He's not here today because, well, I guess his wife did actually need more than one day for her birthday. But I do think he took her to a water park. So maybe pry into that. What happened there? Anyways, today we do have a great episode. We have some friends from Colorado who are following God's calling to missions, full-time missions, and they believe God is calling them into Ireland. Their name is Chris and Joi Copeland. They are, again, from Colorado, and I'll put some links in the description to find out more about them, but it's worldventure.com/CJ Copeland. Chris and Joi Copeland. Get it? And that's a way that you can find out more about them and donate, and you can also follow them on Facebook. Again, those links are in the description below. But I guess, Chris, Joi, officially welcome to the podcast. And did I get that right? You're from Colorado, but is it Denver, Colorado?
Highlands Ranch, technically.
Highlands Ranch.
It's about 20 minutes south of Denver.
Okay. I've been to Colorado Springs. I flew into Denver, but never left the airport.
Oh, gotcha.
That counts as anything.
The Denver airport's way out there in the boonies. Not anywhere near the mountains at all.
Yeah, I know. I was looking out the window and I was like, oh, well, okay, whatever. I'm actually, my wife and I are going hiking in Glacier National Park next month in Montana.
Oh, nice.
So we fly into Denver and have a layover and then.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't wait. Well, all right, let's pump this up. It's the first time meeting each other, so I thought it would be fun to play a game called Rapid Fire. So here's the rules. I'll just ask you some basic questions and to get to know you, and either one of you guys can answer or both, however you want to do it. But we talk a lot about sports in this podcast, so I figured why not talk about sports. So first question, what is your favorite sports team?
You know what's funny is that yes, I used to be a big Laker fan. I grew up in LA.
Oh no!
Yeah. But ever since they got LeBron, I'm not so sure anymore. So I don't know.
LeBron is a hard guy to not like.
Yeah,
he's never done anything bad. It's just so good, but
he is good at basketball. I'm not a big fan of his.
So you're a big basketball fan then? Big Lakers fan?
And we actually, since we moved to Colorado, we never wanted to be Nuggets fans, so we just kind of stopped watching basketball pretty much.
Yeah.
And then you out here, if you don't like the Denver Broncos or if you don't like beer, you have nothing to talk about with anybody.
Yeah. Do you like neither of those?
Neither of us like beer, and when we first moved out here, we weren't football fans, but just so I can get to know people at work, I joined the Fantasy Football League.
There you go. Who cares if you're last place every time? Right?
That's right, exactly.
It's the community that's
exactly. Yeah.
I might have a little bit of an addiction to fantasy football in the betting aspect of it, I guess.
It's a lot of fun. We were never a big betting pool. It was like, I think, $5 to join, and you won like $50 if you won or something. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I'm
like a 2016 champion. So just throwing it out there. If you need any advice later, we can get there.
Nice.
Are you beach people or mountain people?
Mountain.
Me too. It's just something about it. We're getting ready to go hiking, and the campground that we stay at keeps having bears, going into the campgrounds right now. So we're thinking about maybe changing campgrounds.
Nice. Yeah, that's why we moved away from LA, just because we're not beach people at all.
Okay. Chris Tomlin or Ren Collective?
I would say Ren Collective.
I'd say both. I like them both.
Yeah. I lead worship at our church, and I do a lot of Ren Collective songs.
I was going to say, you're going to Ireland, right?
Yeah, we are going to Ireland.
It better be Ren Collective.
Yeah.
You need to watch that answer. I mean, I guess I could tour with Chris Tomlin.
Yeah.
Maybe I should pick somebody else.
Well, at least you didn't say We Are Messengers or Red Collective, since they're both from Ireland. That'd be really hard.
True.
Dang it. I don't.
Or you didn't say U2 or Ren Collective. That would have been harder.
Man, Ren Collective is one of the best. Anytime they're anywhere close to here. I mean, we drove all the way from. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so we drove all the way to Houston
just to see them.
Wow.
It's just every time. And some of it's just the same exact show. Like their first 10 minutes is the same song set for the most part, the same type of thing, but it's just always different. Man, they do a really good job. Are you a TV show series people or movie people?
Ooh, I'd say both.
Yeah.
I enjoy a good movie, but we also, binge watch Netflix TV shows. So
Yeah.
when we have the time.
Murder mysteries? Do you like those?
Not really.
Oh my
No.
gosh. One
Mostly
day I'm going to
comedy.
solve one. I get into those. There's murder mystery podcasts and stuff that I can, that's what my wife and I binge watch or listen to.
That's awesome.
Trips. So
We do more of dual survival like shows like that. Those are fun.
yeah. And one day you might need that information. So
That's
You
right.
never know. Yeah.
you never know. Okay, this one's a pretty hot topic in some churches today, but is it sloppy wet or unforeseen kiss?
Oh, I kind of liked, I know Sloppy Wet was the first rendition of it, but I think I kind of liked the Unforeseen.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I just kind of feel like unforeseen was for those churches that weren't quite contemporary enough to go all in on the sloppy wet. So
Sloppy Wet just sounded a little too graphic for me.
It paints a picture.
It does paint a picture. Yeah. And I just can't picture God kissing me that way. So, yeah.
oh man.
Well, tonight when our boys get home, why don't you give them a sloppy wet kiss?
Yeah.
We'll see.
See which one they would rather like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And they probably say neither at this point. I don't know how old
Yeah.
they are, but my son is 9, and I am not looking forward to the time where he's starting to be more of an individual.
Oh, we're
him
going through
to
that
be-
right now, actually. Our son got his license on Monday.
Oh,
And so he's right now driving our boys out to dinner and then to youth group.
oh,
So, yeah,
gotcha.
it's scary.
Well, let's talk about your ministry story. You guys are called to Full-Time Missions. How'd all that begin?
Well, it started with, for our anniversary every year, Chris and I give each other goals, individual goals. We do spiritual goals and family goals. And so Chris had been at the job he'd been at the same type of job for about 15, 16 years. And I knew he just wasn't very content. And so I said, hey, over the next year, why don't you pray and see if God has something else he would like you to do instead of this same job? And he was like, yeah, okay, I'll give that a try and see what God will say.
So I prayed and almost immediately felt like God was calling us to missions. And I literally laughed at God because I thought that doesn't make any sense. We had just bought a house in Colorado. We were already looking at like retirement property out here, thinking it would be cool to move up to Evergreen. Not that we could afford it, but we like the idea of it. And my wife will tell you, because of her upbringing, she likes stability and
Don't like adventure.
she had just started anxiety medication.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, what are you doing? That doesn't make any sense. So I literally kind of pushed it aside and said, okay, God, what's your plan B? Because plan A is not happening. And he just literally over 9 months just kept saying, no, missions. Finally, I said, okay, God, if you want me to do this, if you want us to do this, you need to prepare Joy's heart for this possibility.
So we were sitting at church one day, and there was this ministry called Africa Hope. So they take refugees from Africa that are dropped off in Denver and just kind of help them acclimate to the society. And so we were sitting there, and we thought, we've already gotten involved inside the church walls. We host small groups. We volunteer our time inside the church. Let's do something outside the walls of the church. And so we decided, we should look into that. And then after we picked up our boys from their Sunday school classes, we were walking out of the service. And I tell this story all the time because I really, truly believe that I meant to say, where do you want to go to lunch? Because it's 12 o'clock, it's lunchtime. And instead I said, hey, do you think we missed our calling? Maybe we should have been missionaries. And Chris said, yeah, let's go. And I went, what? Excuse me? So And so he said, yeah, let's go. And I thought, I am not talking to you about that because I do not want to be a missionary. No, just not going to happen. And so for the next week, I just prayed, God, you're kidding, right? We're not supposed to be missionaries. And I just kept feeling like God was telling me, you should talk to Chris. And so the next Sunday after church, we were talking and I said, hey, last Sunday you said, yeah, let's go. What are you talking about? And so then he told me what God had been impressing on his heart. And I was like, oh, no, not a missionary. Yeah, that's ruining all of my plans, Lord. I've told you again what I want to do. And Chris was like, I really feel like that we should pursue the missionary aspect. And I was like, all right. Well, if God calls you, you're either going to go willingly or you're going to wrestle with him like Jacob, and then he's going to dislocate your hip and you're going to walk with a limp. So for me, I'm like, I already walk funny. I don't need to walk any weirder. So, we better go.
That's basically, the beginning story of how we were called.
How long ago again was that?
So she had me start praying in July of 2012.
Yeah.
And it was about 9 months after that we finally talked and said, okay, yeah. And so we started going through looking for missions organizations because we don't know what we're doing. We don't know how to become a missionary. Mm-hmm. And so, there's no missionary school that I knew of at the time.
You just fly somewhere and be like, I'm a missionary. Yeah.
Yeah. So we found a mission organization in Littleton called World Venture. They've been around for about 75 years. And so we decided, okay, let's go through them. And we got appointed in April of 2014. And then we've been raising support since about October of 2014.
And when's your planned date to kind of venture off, or do you have one yet?
That's a great question. We've been asking God that for about 3.5 years. We basically we're waiting for the rest of our support to come in. Mm-hmm. We're at about 70% right now. And so once that rest of that 30% comes in, we can get on a plane and go.
Okay. Awesome. Do you guys have, before this, revelation, have you guys had any kind of background in ministry and stuff, or has it just been kind of out of the blue?
We had a lot of church involvement. I mean, we've done Bible studies and life groups and all of that. And I led worship at church for a while, or actually several churches. So, I mean, we had lots of different involvements, and, we had done short-term missions as well. But no, this came out of the blue because I have 2 degrees in business, and, I don't have a theology degree, or at least I didn't at the time. And so I was like, what are you doing, God? This is, how am I going to use this on the field?
Although, when my sister and her 2 boys and husband, they used to be missionaries in Kenya. Her son and I were driving one day, just going to yard sales, and he had come back from Kenya, and he said, Auntie Joy, I really think that everybody should be missionaries overseas, and I'm going to start praying for you and Chris and the boys to become missionaries. And I patted his leg. He was about 10 at the time. I patted his leg and I said, sweetheart, not everybody has to be a missionary overseas. God calls us to be missionaries where we're at as well, to share the love of Christ. And he goes, yeah, but I really think that you guys need to be going overseas somewhere. And I patted his leg again. I said, okay, kind of like that condescending aunt that I was at the time. And like, yeah, you do that, honey, and we'll see whose prayer God answers. And it was my nephew's prayer that God answered.
Yeah. It's just interesting. Some people are kind of felt called to ministry because their dad was a pastor. And so it's just interesting.
Yeah.
It's just kind of called you out of nowhere almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exciting and scary, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you listened to any of our first podcast, but we do talk a little bit about how churches are kind of ran like a business. So maybe your business degrees, maybe that is some preparation that God's calling on your life. So I mean, for you guys, I guess before we get into what it's like and why you're going to Ireland, what is a church going to look like that you're starting? Or are you starting a church? Or are you just going to go and just minister to people? Or what's your plan, I guess?
We're initially going to be joining a church that's already been planted. And so it's already about 150 to 200 people in the church. and it's in Galway, Ireland, called Galway City Church. And that'll be the one we're starting off working at. And then once our kids graduate from high school and they're out of the house, and I finish a second master's degree in, theology or Christian education or something, Christian ministry, then we might then be moved to a smaller town or village that doesn't have a church and do a home church plant.
Gotcha.
And so
home churches.
Well, it'll start off as a home church,
Okay.
Until it grows big enough to get a place where we could, meet to worship.
Awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it'll be like a Bible study initially, and then hopefully it grows and grows. And then we rent a school auditorium, and
that's speaking my love language, because I'm all about the home churches.
Nice.
Nice. So I feel like there's a lot of things that you can't get with the big churches that we have nowadays, that you miss out on that community that was a big drawing factor in the Bible to people to Jesus, was the fact that we loved each other so much and was such a close knit group, So I feel like we lose that sometimes, because I can put on a good pretend face when I'm on Sunday morning and make everything in my life look like it's going perfect. So.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the need in Ireland. What's drawing you there? How did you get connected to Ireland? I mean, tell me the story.
So the connected to Ireland is a really cool story. We didn't really know where God was going to want us to serve, and we didn't really, we had a not a preconceived notion, but we had a wish list of where we'd want to go. I kind of always wanted to go to Japan because I love sushi. So I was hoping God would bless that, and bless me with some sushi. But he had other plans. And Joy?
Probably because I don't like sushi.
Yeah.
So that was a gift. Yeah. I think because my sister and her family were in Africa, and I'm not much of the adventurer, but if I was going to go on vacation somewhere, I'd want to go to Africa and go on safari. That was always my hope, but certainly not going to Europe. I never wanted to go to Europe, never had a desire to see Europe, none of that stuff. But
so we started praying, okay, God, where would you want us to serve? And he made it very clear to both of us separately that it was going to be Europe. And we kind of thought, well, that's different. That wasn't on our radar. We're not even sure what missions in Europe looks like. And then we were invited to go to a retreat
in Mozambique.
For Mozambique.
Yeah. And so we had told my sister, the Kenyan missionary, hey, we were invited to Mozambique retreat to see if we should go there. But Chris and I really feel drawn to going to Europe. And she just started to cry. And she's like, don't go to Europe. Don't go to Europe. And I thought, okay, it's not like that's going to endanger our lives. So that's weird. Why are you crying? And she's like, you don't understand. Europe is like the missionaries' graveyard. Missionaries come back discouraged, and some of them don't follow the Lord because they didn't see the fruit of their labor. It's just really hard. It's hard work in Europe. And we said, well, God has really called us there. She goes, okay, here's the deal. After she wiped away her tears and, took her emotions out of it, she said, do this. If God is truly calling you guys to Europe, while you're at the Mozambique conference, pray that he would confirm Europe with 3 people and narrow it down to where in Europe. And Chris and I were like, okay, that's just kind of weird. What a weird prayer. You know what I mean? Like, it's Africa. We're going to an Africa retreat / conference, and he wants to pray this about Europe. Okay. So we did. And man, God moves in weird ways.
So we sat down with on the first day with some World Venture staff that was at the retreat. And the first day we sat down with the assistant to the director of Africa. And she's like, hey, tell me your story and your background. I want to get to know you guys. And so I talked about how I grew up actually Catholic and went to Catholic school. And I was taught by Catholic missionary nuns from Ireland. And went all the way through all of the sacraments and everything. But then right around confirmation, I knew what that meant. And I was having a lot of questions about Catholicism, Roman Catholicism, that I wasn't getting answers to, like, why do we pray to saints, and why do we worship Mary the way we do? And why do we have to confess our sins to a priest when the Bible says we can confess to one another? I don't understand some of these questions. And so I decided not to be confirmed as a Catholic and kind of stepped away from the faith and looked around for a few years and then became a Christian 3 years later at a Baptist church that my brother invited me to. And then Joi, her story.
I grew up with an alcoholic father who was just a severe alcoholic. So we grew up my 4 sisters and I grew up in that environment. And once we told the assistant to the director of Africa this, she said, have you guys considered Ireland? And Chris and I were like, no. And I actually laughed and I said, Ireland doesn't need missionaries. That's a vacation spot.
Yeah.
She goes, yeah. She's like, yeah, it is a vacation spot. You're right. But no, they are in desperate need of Jesus there. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And then just kind of pushed that thought aside. And
But it was our Catholic and alcohol family background that made us, that she was like, oh, that makes a connection there with the need. And so the next day we sat down with the director to Asia at the time. And I was excited about this one because I was still thinking Japan and sushi. Maybe God would change his plan to send us to Europe. And he's like the same thing. Tell me your story. Tell me about yourself. And we did, just like we did now. And he's like, gosh, you guys your background seems to fit really well with Ireland. Have you guys thought about serving there? And we were like, no, but now we're thinking about it because you're the second person that said that this weekend.
And then that night we were having dinner with the gentleman who's going to walk us through the appointee process. And he said, okay, so tell me your story and your background. And so we did. And he goes, wow, I really feel like God is doing something in Europe. Have you guys considered going to Ireland? And we were like, what? Okay. So at that point, it was very clear that we were Ireland bound. Yeah.
God made it very clear. And then another cool thing is that most of the Irish team had to come back to headquarters in Littleton, and we live like 15 minutes away from it. And we got to meet most of them and have coffee and talk to them and see if we're a good fit for the team and whether we're a good fit for Ireland ministry. And so God really orchestrated a lot of cool things in that, first 3 or 4 months.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Then we went to Ireland in April of 2014 and
September.
Oh, did I say April?
Yeah.
Sorry, September of 2014. And got to meet the team and got to see if we're a good fit, and then also got to really see the need firsthand. And we found out things like Ireland has some of the highest suicide rates in the world. For instance, the 4th highest suicide rates in the world for young men between 18 and 24. The highest suicide rate in the world for young teen women between 14 and 18, or not in the world, in Europe, the highest in Europe. And they struggle with alcoholism. Over 50% of the people who drink there have harmful excessive drinking patterns. They drink to get drunk. We found out that, because the first thing I thought was, well, I thought Ireland was very Catholic. What's the story? And, if you look online, you'll see, okay, it looks like it's 70% Catholic. Why are they struggling the way they are? And the truth is that they're Catholic. Most of them are Catholic by culture. So it's cultural Catholic. And really they're nominal, or many of them don't attend church at all. And so like only 3 out of 10 actually go to church on a regular basis that say they're Catholic. And so, we read an article that said that Ireland's abandoning religion faster than every country on earth except for communist Vietnam.
Wow.
And so that kind of shows you, they're just moving away into atheism and no belief at all. In fact, they just fought to add none as a religious category in their census so that they can be represented. So
wow.
None is now a religious category.
Do we even have that in our census?
I don't know. I haven't taken a census in a while.
I usually avoid those guys.
Yeah.
I don't want the government knowing me.
Yeah. So, we really saw the need firsthand and it really broke our hearts. That's the thing that broke our hearts the most, was that we had read this article when we were in Galway, and it was a year anniversary of 5 teen suicides in Galway City over one weekend. And they were interviewing the person doing the suicide hotline and said, what is it that you hear when people call in? And he said, the thing we hear the most is a lack of hope. And that first broke our hearts, because we thought, Jesus brings hope. Why are they struggling, to have hope? And it's because they're walking away from faith. And so our hope is to go there and to bring hope to the hopeless.
Wow. I had a friend once tell me that God is everywhere, so go where the money is. And you guys aren't doing that. And I commend you for that. You're going where God is really leading you and is really turning your heart towards. It's really just an interesting process. Like I was telling my wife when I was like, I'm talking to these people that they're going to be missionaries in Ireland. And we're like, I want to be missionaries in Ireland. Like that's great. But really, I can't be a missionary because I'm too selfish with my time and stuff. Just as I look back, like I like Saturdays where I don't have much to do. So I got to break myself of that habit.
Well, think about it this way: you asked us whether we were beach people or mountain people. God's sending us to an island.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We are not island people, but that's where God's sending us.
I don't even like wind. And he's sending me to a very windy country. I'm like, oh boy.
Oh man.
So his kingdom's not always about our pleasure.
Well, exactly. And I think that's the big part of it is it's a tricky course because some people are drawn to what they like, and so some people would have just said Ireland, I don't want to live there, I can go to somewhere else, and then it's just like when you're trying to follow God, it's just a tricky thing to do, to know what God's is calling you to, really, because you got all these people that are telling you different voices coming in, like telling, you should go here, you should go here. And then some of them sound good to you, but then when you're like, look at it, you just kind of still have that unrest of, it's not really what God is wanting me to do, and
yeah.
So it's, I can understand how it's a struggle. It's been a few years of just following, was it 9 months before, did I hear that right? 9 months before really Ireland came into the picture? Or
yeah, it was a little bit later actually, because it was 9 months just to get me to go, okay, yeah, missions.
Okay.
And then a couple of, maybe, 3 or 4 months later when God finally confirmed Ireland for us.
So, I mean, and that to me is normal to take that long because it's, so hard to distinguish your likes and what you want and with what God wants and what other people want and what God wants, and so, it's so how can we help you get to Ireland? Sure.
So really right now, I mean, we've accomplished every training that World Venture requires. And there were quite a few. We've raised our outgoing costs, which is to the tune of $80,000. So that's done. All we need are 30 partners, financial partners monthly at $100 a month. And we can finally get on that plane and go. Or 60 at 50 or however you want to break it down.
We'll let you math people figure that out.
15 to 200 if you want to go there.
I'm not a math person. Don't ask me to work it out.
Don't
do simple math.
But really all we need is just that last 30% and we can go. Mm-hmm. So a thing that would help us the most is just if there's anybody out there listening that has a heart for missions or for heart for Europe, or if our story kind of tugged at your heart, you can go to www.worldventure.com/CJ Copeland, and that's our page. And you can, there's a give button there if you're interested in joining us, or if you want to talk more, we're happy to meet with people.
Or connect us with people.
Or churches. Yeah, that's huge for us too.
Yeah. All right, I'll put a link in the description of the podcast so you can so easily click on it and learn more. And I definitely will be checking in probably next month or so. I'll just check in, see how you guys are doing, if you're any closer to that goal, because, I mean, progress is great, and I'm sure everybody wants to be involved in this and be involved in your journey. And I hope that other people are challenged that what is God calling you to do? You got things in your life that you probably have some unrest because you're not doing what God's calling you to do. So it's also good to maybe ask yourself, where's God leading me? So
and you're never too old.
You're never too old.
So,
yeah.
How old were you guys when God called you to?
Well, I'm going to be 46 this year.
Yeah. So
So
in our early 40s.
we should be at this point, like well into our career and thinking about retirement and,
Retirement? What's
getting ready for the empty
that?
nest.
Yeah, well, hold on.
But instead we're selling our house or we already sold our house. Sold everything we own. We're living in a borrowed house right now. Literally we're ready to jump on that plane and go with very little belongings left.
And how many kids did you guys have?
We have
3 boys.
3 boys.
3 boys. And so how excited are they for the mission field?
Well, our 14-year-old, he is very excited because he wants to be a sheep rancher. And so he's kind of ready to go. And
he wanted to do that before we were even called to Ireland.
He did, yeah. So that was fun. So he's ready to go and to start interning and volunteering time on a sheep ranch. Our oldest boy, he told me he's not meant to stay in the United States. Even after he graduates from high school, he doesn't believe that he's supposed to stay in the States. So he's probably headed for a South American country.
Maybe Peru.
And our youngest one, he just wants to have friends. He's 13. He just wants to make friends and act and, lead as many people to a relationship with Christ as he can. And so they're pretty excited, but they're teenagers.
Yeah.
So we have our ups and our downs, but they know where the end goal is and, that we're going to do what it takes to get there. So they're all
teenagers are probably ready to be there.
Yes.
Ready to stop talking about it.
Yeah.
You couldn't have said it better.
Yeah. When we talked to them about it when we were first called, and we did because we felt like we were called as a family.
Mm-hmm.
They were thinking we're going to get on the plane the next day, and it's now 3.5, 4 years later, and we're still not there yet. So
it's almost like more confirmation that God is calling you guys to missions when even your entire family is ready just to get up and go.
Yeah.
Or maybe you, Joy. Maybe you took a little longer than everybody else, but
she didn't take as long as I expected, actually.
I'm not a traveler. I don't care to travel. Getting on a plane freaks me out, but God's like, well, you've been on a lot of planes, so get used to it. Oh, he's fun.
Yeah. So we're excited to be there. We're excited to finally get there and begin this ministry.
I think actually one of the greatest things, and I think this hit me more than it did Chris, just because we're different. So one of the things that really hit me as we were learning more about the need in Ireland is that there are 72 towns with 5,000 people or more that don't have a gospel presence. So no church, no in-home Bible studies, nothing like that. And for me, that was pretty huge because that's over 350,000 who are not hearing the good news. And that just breaks my heart. So for me, that was one of the saddest things I think that I've heard about Ireland.
So some of our missionary travels took us up to a place called Chugwater, Wyoming. And this is a town literally of about 200 people. If you blink, you'd miss it as you're driving through. And there are 2 churches in this town of 200 people, a Catholic church and a Protestant church. And so, we think of Ireland with, that many towns or villages without any church at all. That just is crazy. It doesn't make any sense to us as Americans.
I literally drive to work and I pass 4 churches and I only work a mile away.
Yeah.
And that's the Bible Belt, Oklahoma lifestyle.
We just spoke at a church in Palmyra, New York, and they're in the Guinness Book of World Records, I guess, because there's a church on each corner of a 4-way intersection, and that's like these are huge churches too.
Yeah,
insane. And they don't have that in Ireland. I just scratched my head and I think, how can you not have a gospel presence? Like no home church, no Bible study, nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we just really want to get there and at least knock out one town.
Yeah, exactly. Just do what you can. And then, that's, if you look at the story of the early church, it started small, right? Yep. And it spread quickly. So
that's right.
You look at churches in China, they start in homes and they're more faster growing, I think, than any church in the United States is the church in China. So just having a presence in that town alone is going to change people's lives.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a lot of our ministry is just going to be living life among a community. And so, going to church, yes, but like being a part of the community, seeing them at the laundromat or, at the grocery store and getting our kids in the same sports programs and that stuff like that, just doing life with people is going to be a lot of what our ministry is.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Being the church instead of going to church is
exactly
kind of the thing we say at our church.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, it was great to meet you guys for sure.
Thank you.
And,
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
I really do hope that the word gets out. You get a more podcast, you get a more presence out there. People hear about your story and
Thank you.
I hope by at least Christmas you get this thing going and you get there.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having us.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much.
Again, you can check them out at worldventure.com/CJ Copeland for more info. And then also follow them on Facebook. Follow their journey. Get involved. I think it's a pretty neat calling that they have in their life. Definitely a little jealous on my side because Ireland sounds like a cool place to live. But at the same time, I ain't going. So if you feel called to help donate or just want to follow them, I've got some links in the description below. Again, thanks you guys for tuning in, and hope you have a great week.